Hi, and good evening. My name is David, and today we are kicking off a short run of Tales from the Low Cantrefs. Tales from the Low Cantrefs is a PBTA game currently in development by um, Luke Jordan of Tales from the Wildwoods. Tales from the Wildwoods, sorry, Games from the Wildwoods. I'll get there eventually. This game is a Hearth fantasy coming of age game. It's inspired by things like Earthsea, the Chronicles of Prydain, the Garthnix's All Kingdoms, stories of that sort of nature, where you have kind of a young protagonist dealing with an often dangerous world with strange magics in it. So that is kind of the idea of this game. I'll go into a bit more of a discussion about more precise stuff on that in a moment. This game is being run as part of the Gauntlet. So we are an online gaming group. We have a calendar where we sign up for games like this, play online together. You can check that out, sign up for games even, on our website at gauntlet-rpg.com. I'll put a link to that down below, as well as a link to some information on this game, though it's currently in a sort of, I guess I call it semi-open playtest. So that's, I'll come back to that in a second. But yeah, the as well as sort of the gaming that we do on the Gauntlet, we also have a number of podcasts. We also have a monthly gaming zine called Codex, which you can check out. Codex is available as sort of part of a Patreon subscription, but you can also pick up back issues of that through Drive-Through RPG. So yeah, I will. I'm going to start off now by talking a little bit about what the game entails, what's the part of it, by going through the CATS process. This is just an acronym standing for Concept, Aim, Tone, and Subject Matter. And basically just acts as a way of guiding us through the discussion of what the game is. So yeah, I'll bring up what I have written in front of me. So as I said, Tales from the Low Cantrefs is a PBTA game about a group of young characters coming of age in a Hearth fantasy world. This the sort of the key concepts for this game is it's about characters who live together in an isolated village where contact with the outside is rare, and people's understanding of magic power in the wider world is through a lens of superstition and folklore. So specifically, kind of the touchstones it gives in the book are the idea that, yeah, you know, there are probably places of learning and big cities out there in the world somewhere. They are not here. Where you are is very rural, very isolated, with a lot of kind of wilderness around. Even kind of contact with other villages is a bit sparse. You know, you may occasionally travel out to trade with nearby villages or go into the nearby market town, but that's about the limit of the journey that anyone would expect to do in their lifetime. Coming from outside the village is viewed with suspicion. Coming from very far away, even more so. So yeah, as I said, this game is explicitly designed to tell coming of age stories, and some of those sort of tropes that I'm sure we're kind of, at least to some extent, familiar with. Things like dealing with unreliable adults, dealing with failure and having to rely on others, learning from experience, facing loss, all these sorts of things. So those are kind of some of the key frameworks that some of the mechanics and stuff are designed to play into. As I sort of mentioned, this game is currently in playtest. We'll be playing using the playtest rules that were released at the end of last year. I believe at the moment Luke released these playtest materials to people that had signed up on a mailing list. I don't know if there is a way of getting hold of them if you weren't part of that initial mailing list. So it's possible this won't be available in the immediate future. Though also, I'm sure that if you speak to Luke over Twitter or some other means of electronic communication, you might be able to get your hands on a copy. Another side effect, obviously, of the fact that this game is still in playtest at the minute is that there's a limited number of playbooks at the moment. There are only 4 playbooks. We are, unfortunately, one of our players couldn't make it this evening. They had a last minute emergency come up. Hopefully they will be here next time. But yeah, so there's essentially just 1 playbook per person for this game at the moment, though there are more intended for the actual full release. Also, some elements of the game aren't yet fleshed out or aren't yet given context in terms of what mechanical weight they may or may not have. So you might come across the odd bit and piece in the game where it's like you've got these elements in the game that reference stuff that isn't really fully fleshed out yet. Just so people are kind of aware that this is a playtest. I will also probably, as a result of that, I may be just checking in when we do our sort of sum ups at the end of the session, just if anyone has any sort of initial notes they want to give back, particularly as we get further towards the end of our run, which I will endeavour to feed back to Luke. So anyway, concept. Aim of the game is fundamentally, is the way I see it, certainly it's about seeing how your characters grow and change in the face of the challenges that they have to deal with. As I said, it's specifically a kind of coming of age type story, so that's that sort of growth is what we'd expect to see, whether that be kind of facing external threats, the expectations of their friends, families and elders, and more like internal things as well. There are quite robust mechanics for interactions between characters, but it is, I'd say, one of them. It's at the more outward-looking end of the PBTA spectrum. It is more about your characters going out into the world and doing things rather than being very focused at the individual player characters interacting with each other. I mean, that will obviously still be quite a significant part of it, but so will be sort of like dealing with other external factors, unlike something like, say, Monster Hearts, where you can go an entire session without really ever seeing an NPC. That's why I sort of look at it. And yeah, to quote from some of the playtest materials, it says it tells stories about growing up in the shadow of ruin and disapproval and grief, while finding what happiness and giving what help you can. It's not a game about saving the world, but one about holding onto your small corner so there is a world left when the time for saviors comes. Which brings us quite nicely onto tone. So as I've mentioned, Tales from the Low Cantrefs is designed as that sort of young adult coming of age genre. But it is kind of at the, I suppose what I've described as like the more muted end of that spectrum. So we're not talking kind of, we're talking less like your sort of Avatar, She-Ra, kind of quite high color, high action thing. This is a bit more subdued, a bit more introverted, I suppose. And can potentially, I mean, as can other that media, even things like Avatar, can deal with occasionally some quite serious and somber topics. But yeah, that's definitely something we may encounter in this. Magic is present in the world, but is rare, probably close to never really encountered by the villagers. Though that may change, obviously, and tends to be looked at more with fear than with wonder. The outside world is a wild and threatening place, and the village is not a center of light and learning. There, as I said, there may be such places in the world, but they are likely only known to the villagers as fantastical locations in stories. Superstition and folklore are where most knowledge is preserved. The village tends to be suspicious of outsiders. Death is a very real threat, and its presence is always near. And it's one of the things we'll sort of discuss a little bit in a moment. But you said, yeah, this idea of death as a concept is quite it sort of suffuses quite a bit of the game, particularly one of the playbooks. So yeah, those are all things to sort of bear in mind on our tone front. There is still obviously absolutely the space to have fun and be kids, teens, young adults, but there are some kind of more sort of grim underpinnings to the story, but even if it isn't our primary focus. So finally, subject matter. So in general, this again will be kind of keeping the subject matter on a sort of rough equivalence with the sort of source material. So we'll be looking at that kind of young adult fiction when it comes to the subject matter, which is again obviously not to say that we can't deal with some serious topics, but we won't be having like lots of graphic and gratuitous violence. We won't be having sexual content, that sort of thing. But like I said, it's a dangerous world. Obviously, it probably goes without saying, given the fact that the premise of this game is playing young characters, there will be sort of elements of like child endangerment risk to young characters in this game, including, you know, obviously sort of violence, even potentially lethal violence. This, unlike something like, say, Masks, this is absolutely a game where your characters have the potential to die should the situation go badly. It has to go fairly badly, you know, I won't lie, but that possibility is out there. Also, we'll be dealing with quite a lot of stuff around things like family relationships and pressure applied by family, that sort of thing. As I mentioned, death is thematically quite important in this game, if not the actual. Like I said, I wouldn't say it's a high lethality game per se, but death is very much a feature of the game. Grief as well. There are sort of mechanics for grieving. This works a little bit like the kind of like darkest self in Monster Hearts. Though it's specifically triggered by if your character encounters grief. We can touch on that as and when it comes up. Also, the undead are quite baked into the idea of the setting. How much we personally explore that side of things is kind of is obviously down to you as players. One of the playbooks, as I mentioned, does specifically play into a lot of this. They have the ability to pass through into the land of the dead and do stuff around that. We may touch on themes of romance again as a sort of coming of age thing. As mentioned before, given the fact we'll be dealing with younger characters, we won't be having any sort of graphic sexual content as part of this game, and we will have a bit of a discussion in a moment once we get to our safety tools about how we handle romance and the like. So yeah, I think that has covered everything I wanted to go through in that initial overview. Does anyone have any questions on anything I have mentioned so far? Nope, brilliant, thank you. Awesome, so I'm going to stop our recording now. Oh no, I'm not, sorry. I'm going to first mention our safety tools and then I'll stop the recording. So yeah, we'll be using a number of safety tools as we play this game. As I mentioned, it can touch potentially quite personal and quite subject matter and quite quite intense subject matter potentially. So we'll be using a number of safety tools to keep things in a good place for everyone. We'll be using lines and veils. We'll be, as I said, in a moment we'll discuss those. So lines and veils are essentially things that lines are things we don't want to see in the game at all. We'll just keep them off the table. We won't refer to them at all. We won't have them as part of characters' backstories. It's just something we don't want to deal with at all. We will also have veils. These are things that we can feature that content in the game, but we don't want to have any sort of detailed exploration of it, really. We might have stuff described as happening off scene, very light descriptions of stuff, or just not go sort of full pelt for it. So those are lines and veils. We also have the X card. The X card can be used at any time if some content comes up in the course of play that you're not happy with and you don't want to see. You can invoke the X card by doing this with your hands or something similar, by putting something in chat, or by just saying over voice chat that you'd like to use the X card. I will, as ever, give my usual disclaimer that I may well at any point be tabbed out into a different screen looking at something. So the visual cues aren't always the best for me to pick up on. If you want to get the best way of getting my attention is to just say I'd like to X-card that, but do feel free to use the others as well. Just be aware there might be a slight delay in me noticing, and if everyone else does notice that someone has put like an X in the chat and I haven't like picked up on it, then do feel free to shout out on their behalf as well, and we'll stop things and check in. When the X card's invoked, basically I might just have to ask you what subject matter you're not happy with that's in the scene or similar, just so we know what to avoid going forwards and what to clip out of that current what's it. I won't ask you to justify why you want to X card something, and any reason is fine, whether it be just subject matter you're not comfortable dealing with, not happy dealing with in that present moment, whether it's something you feel is a bit tonally off, or it may be that someone has maybe just neglected a line or a veil, and we just want to kind of stop it there, as it is possible to do so. So those are. That's how to use the X card essentially. We'll also be using script change. There's a little PDF in the shared folder if you want to check that out, with a little more detail than I'll go into now. But fundamentally, it gives us a few commands, a bit like a remote control. I'll touch on the ones I think are most important. There are a couple of others that you can look at if you want to, but first and most important of all, I think, is pause. At any point, you can call out a pause if we just want to take a quick break from what is going on in the scene. And that break can be for any reason. It might just be that you're in the middle of talking to an NPC or whatever, and the doorbell rings, you have to go get it. That's fine. Just call a quick pause and head off. That's not a problem. It might be something else comes up you need to deal with. It could be that you just want to have a discussion about the way a scene is going, because either you're not happy with the direction it's going and you want to just scat around certain things, or it might be you think you think it's really good and you really want to play into something. Anything like that, just call a quick pause where we can have that discussion out of character. We can always check in and always should check in with each other about where stuff's going, so feel free to use that. There's also fast forward. Fast forward can just be used if we want to skip over something quickly. This might be kind of a bit like a veil, where it's just like, I don't really want a big, full, in-depth discussion of this, fixing this person's broken leg or whatever. Can we just, assume that it's been bandaged up and move on? Or it might be that we just feel like a scene is kind of is just going on a bit longer, or just isn't getting to a conversation is just kind of going around in circles, and we just want to say, can we just move this to the decision point or whatever else. And last one that I think is particularly useful is rewind. This can be used a bit like our X card, where it's just like, actually, I didn't like where this is going, can we just stop and go back and go in a different direction? Or it might be that you just think, oh, actually, the way I described that doesn't quite fit with what I intended, or what I said doesn't quite work. I think what I said sounded a bit more aggressive than my character's actually being. Can we just rewind and I'll say it slightly differently? Anything like that really is cool. So those are those safety tools. We'll also be using the open door policy, which is just basically to say, if at any point you do need to leave the game, that is fine. Feel free to do so. Do not feel bound to be here now that you're here. Whether that be because, again, you need to take a quick break, the doorbell's gone, whatever else. Feel free to go and do that. Or if you need to leave the session entirely for whatever reason, that is also fine. It is useful if you can let me know how long you'll be gone, or if you're going to be gone entirely, just for the purposes of planning what we're doing with the evening. But don't feel that you have to. If you need to leave, then you need to leave, and that's fine. If for whatever reason, like I lose internet connection or anything like that, and I'm gone for about 10 minutes or so without checking in, then assume that something's come up at my end, and I've had to leave, or have been separated forcibly from the internet. So at that point, just feel free to assume that the session is sort of finished for the evening. Touch wood, I don't think that my internet seems very stable. I don't foresee any problems tonight, so shouldn't be an issue. But just on the off chance that something comes up, just be aware of that. I think that is all of the safety tools and stuff I wanted to go over first. Now I will stop our recording